Hello, Hollywood. Can you hear me? All right. Welcome to this morning's Walk of Fame ceremony. I'm LaRon Gubler, President and CEO of the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, which is presenting this program. Thank you. Today we are honoring a man who has had an illustrious career in the music industry. Many of his career highlights were achieved right here in this historic Capitol Records Tower, which he helped to save and preserve. And today, Hollywood honors music executive Joe Smith. All right, Joe. So, Joe, you are going to receive the 2,558th star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Remember that number. Now, we have a great program today, and before we hear anyone, it's my privilege to tell you just a few of Joe's accomplishments. If I read everything, we'd be here all afternoon. We can't do that. So over the course of his prolific career, Joe Smith holds the distinction of being the only person to have headed 3 major record companies. And you can cheer for whatever you like. A native of Chelsea, Massachusetts. Okay, a few New Englanders here. Joe was president of his high school class. After serving in the U.S. Army Infantry in the Far East, he received his BA in English and Political Science from Yale University. Any Yaleys out here? Joe worked as a sportscaster and disc jockey in Virginia and Pennsylvania before moving to Boston, where he became a top-rated and pioneering rock and roll DJ. And he appeared in the motion picture Jamboree at that time. In 1961, Joe moved to California and entered the music industry as national promotions manager for Warner Brothers Records. And you can cheer for that, of course. And get this, he was named Promotion Executive of the Year 4 times by the Gavin Report and Industry Trade publication. He was named president of Warner Brothers Records in 1972. All right. And in 1975, Joe became chairman of Elektra Asylum Records, a division of Warner Communications. And that's where he worked with many of the greats there for 8 years. In 1983, he was named president and CEO of Home Sports Entertainment, a division of Warner Cable. And following this, he became the first full-time president of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. During this time, he appeared in the motion pictures FM and One Trick Pony. All right. A career highlight. In 1985, Joe interviewed more than 230 artists, producers, managers, and executives for his book, Off the Record. And that book would become a strong seller in Europe, Japan, and the U.S. In fact, the audio interviews on which the book is based comprise the Joe Smith Collection at the Library of Congress. In 1987, Joe became president and CEO of Capitol EMI Music. And during his 7-year tenure, the company registered record profits from such artists as Garth Brooks, Tina Turner, Bonnie Raitt, MC Hammer, Bob Seger, David Bowie, Poison, Megadeth, and many others. Upon his retirement from Capitol EMI at the end of 1993, Joe assumed executive producer responsibilities to the World Cup soccer tournament. For World Cup USA in 1994, he facilitated a Dodger Stadium appearance by the Three Tenors. How many of you were there? All right, I figured there'd be several. Joe has had many awards bestowed upon him. Just last year, he was the recipient of Billboard Magazine's inaugural Clive Davis Visionary Award. I think that's a great first honoree for that award. What do you think? Huh? Joe has been a highly visible executive and spokesman for the music industry in Washington and overseas. He has led the fight for copyright protection and against piracy, testifying before several congressional committees on that topic. And Joe has served as an officer or director of the City of Hope, Cedars-Sinai Hospital, T.J. Martell Foundation, Variety Club, and the Neil Bogart Memorial Lab. He is a trustee at the California Institute of the Arts, Yale School of Music, the Basketball Hall of Fame, Magic Johnson Foundation, Rhythm and Blues Foundation, and the Museum of Science and Industry. Joe, where do you find the time to do all that? Oh, easy. All right, let's give our honoree a big hand. Now, before you get to hear from Joe, we have a few special guests here who to say a few accolades about him. Our first speaker is an award-winning singer-songwriter and musician who has sold more than 18 million albums in the U.S. Coming to prominence in the 1970s, he has written and recorded such songs as These Days, The Pretender, Running on Empty, Dr. My Eyes, Take It Easy, and Somebody's Baby. In 2004, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as bestowed an honorary doctorate of music by Occidental College right here in LA. Please welcome Joe's good friend, Jackson Browne.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be on hand here to celebrate Joe Smith getting his star on the Walk of Fame. I'm not sure what you have to do to get a star. I mean, I've been hearing that, like people have to sponsor you. You have to. I was walking on Hollywood Boulevard a long time ago, 20 or 30 years ago, and I looked down and someone had carved their own name with a linoleum knife. It said Mary Crabtree. I liked that a lot. That appealed to me. It actually had I had a lot of resonance with me because I think for everybody making music, back there in their mind somewhere, they're hoping for that kind of recognition, that kind of reaching the heights. I inherited Joe from David Geffen, or he inherited me from David Geffen. He became the president of Elektra Records at a very crucial time for my career. And I got to say, it was also at a time where that record company, we had all sort of gone from Asylum to Elektra, and from a very small group of friends making records to a very big company. And I guess in the back of my mind, I was never really quite sure if I would have ever been signed by an executive like Joe Smith, because of the scope, because of the grandeur of the list of the people that he has been involved with, So I was very motivated to try to succeed for him. I was already a legend in my own bedroom, but I wanted to be, I wanted to be a success at Joe Smith's Elektra Records. And actually that's the way it went. Joe was very, very energetic. He was extremely supportive and buoyant and enthusiastic, and laid various steps out for me, things that he wanted me to do, to try to do. There were times when various record executives, like there was a time when there was no merchandising. There were no T-shirts with band's name on it. I'm trying to remember the guy's name now. I don't think he's in the record business anymore, but he looked at us and say, "No money for underwear." And we would say, because we all wanted our name on a T-shirt. I mean, these are the things that would be beyond having a star anywhere. We wanted a limousine, to the gig, or we wanted somebody to give us some shirts with our names on them, I think Joe helped me and the people that I was on that label with grasp the scope of what was going on there. And as I say, he was always supportive and always very friendly. He always struck me as like he had a bit of the Borscht Belt in him, And the most important thing to me was that I would have control of what I was doing. I almost don't care what happens after I'm done with it. that's a failing of mine. So I was very lucky to have someone like Joe receive my records and work with them and do the job of selling those records and doing the record business part of it. But that came around to sort of surprised him at another crucial moment in our relationship when he was in charge of renegotiating my contract. We renegotiated a deal, and he gave me everything I wanted, everything. I thought, that's crafty. That's really crafty. He's giving me everything I want. And the night before we were going to sign this, I found something to object to. Well, it was really something I didn't know about. I found out at the last minute they were going to put out like a greatest hits package. I thought, well, this is not the time to be putting out hits. My past catalog is whatever it is, and I don't want them working that. I want to work my next record. I only cared about my newest songs. And so I went over there and I told him I wanted to, I didn't want him to have the right to put out my greatest hits. Well, we negotiated. So he finally agreed that they would have the right to put out my greatest hits whenever it was I decided it was okay. And honestly, that's really all I wanted. I just wanted control. I wanted to know that I could do that after I made my next record. I needed to know that they were going to work my new songs, and they were involved with me as a creative person, not as a commodity or as an entity. And as you probably all know, it's very easy to celebrate one's past in this town. Everything is nostalgia for one thing or another. And that goes on in your career because people come to you at various times and say, I grew up with you, or you were the soundtrack to my time in college, or whatever it was. And a friend of mine, a doctor I met, said, this nostalgia's got a bad rap. You resist it. You don't want to have anything to do with nostalgia but think about it. Whatever that feeling you have for that time in your life when you were coming into your own, when the world was was your oyster, when you were able to achieve what you wanted to achieve, that's a force in you, and that's a thing that will keep you alive, and it's a thing that will keep you creative and going forward in your life. And so that's why people love the music that they loved when they were young and when that was going on in their life. The challenge is to find the music the new music that makes that makes that period of your time that now as creative a time as then. But I want to thank you, Joe, because you always gave me what you allowed me to have control of my destiny, and you also allowed me to see what was possible, various options and choices, and always supported me, and always were a gentleman, and never did any of that underhanded shit that some of your successors did. Thank you, Joe. Not naming any names. Thank you so much. It's so great to be on hand to celebrate your getting your richly deserved star on the Walk of Fame.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson Browne. Let me acknowledge a few people who are with us today. We have Beth Marlis, the chair of the board of the Hollywood Chamber from Musicians Institute. Beth. Right. And we also have the chair of our Walk of Fame committee this year, Maureen Schultz of Capitol Records. Maureen. And let me also acknowledge a Walk of Famer, Mace Newfield, who's with us. Mace, wave. All right. Well, our next speaker is more than just a best-selling artist, a respected guitarist, an expressive singer, and an accomplished songwriter. She has become an institution in the American music field. Born to a musical family, this 9-time Grammy winner was named by Rolling Stone as one of the 100 greatest singers of all time. All right. Her many hits include Something to Talk About, I Can't Make You Love Me, and Love Sneaking Up on You. Please welcome Walk of Famer Bonnie Raitt to the stage.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so glad there's a picture of Johnny Grant here. He is sorely missed. I want to say I'm so proud to be here to be able to honor you. As you were here honoring me just a few feet away, I would never have lasted or begun in this business if it wasn't for the class and enthusiasm and taste of this man right here. I'm telling you, there's not many artists that can say that the reason I started in this business and continued my second bloom 20 years later was I was signed at Warner Brothers in 1971 by Joe Smith, and I was signed at Capitol in 1989 with Joe Smith. And thank you for my career and my life that I still love so much. I just want to say a few words. I'll try not to gush too much, but it's hard because, as Jackson so eloquently said, there's not many people that give it to you straight, that aren't underhanded, that allow you the kind of focus and control to be able to do what you do best and run a ship at both Warner Brothers and Capitol, where my experience, where he hires the best people that also have the artist's long-term integrity at stake. It's not about this quarter's bottom line. It's about developing artist relationships with the A&R departments and the promo departments and radio, and he knew from being in radio what it takes to get a record played. And the idea that you could be so appreciative and respectful of what artists need, it was revolutionary in a business. And it's the reason I was able to sign with Warner's, because even at 21, without writing all my own material and falling into this as a job, to be able to know that I was going to be on the roster with Randy Newman and Ry Cooder and Little Feat and the Meters and Alan Toussaint, and that I was expressly told that we don't care if you're a singles artist or have hits. We're not going to tell you what to wear, when to put out a record, who to work with. You just do what you feel is best, and we'll support you, and we'll make our money from, you know, Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Frank Sinatra. You know, it was revolutionary to be in a family-run business. I don't think anybody could say more and know how special that time was at Warner Reprise over across in Burbank. It was just an unbelievably fun, wild, circus acts coming through with Bob Reger and Stan Cornin coming up with all kinds of promotion things. It was a big party in the best sense of the word, mutual respect, and it was no bean counters overseeing what we were doing. We just had music people in charge, and they hired other music people, and they happened to know how to promote records without any compromise on the artist's part at all. So from the time I was at Warner's, I knew it was a very special family-run organization, and I never expected to be up there with those artistic giants, and you made me feel welcome. And I'm going to try not to lose it, but you know, when things changed in the business in the 80s and in my life, I didn't respond with any enthusiasm with where the business was going. I just was, you know, a lot of roots Americana today type artists were kind of marginalized, and there wasn't as much support at FM radio. It was all becoming kind of big business. If you didn't pull in the hit singles and you didn't have a certain look, you were kind of pushed to the wayside. And after a tricky bunch of years, this man came one more time with the help of my managers and took another chance on me at Capitol. And none of us could have expected that Nick of Time would have done what it did, including Joe, I think. But I'll never forget, even before I won those Grammys for that album, they did such an incredible job with the team that he brought over to Capitol. And just the statement of what this guy has done in his life, the nexus of sports and music, which in my band, you can't even make one more important than the other. Everybody that loves musicians knows the importance. And Joe Smith has been a legend in radio as an executive, his charitable work in the sports world, as a raconteur and a Toastmaster. I am so honored to be able to be here and give something back to this man that has brought me so much opening and opportunity. And all the artists that I love, we really, on our behalf, they asked me to please thank you today. I mean, James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Van Morrison, T-Bone Burnett. In the 80s, they probably wouldn't have been signed. You know what I mean? Who knows? But Joe made us feel valuable and was, to this day, so much integrity and class and so much enthusiasm, and he looks like a kid. I mean, I'm telling you, I am looking forward to living the next few decades with the class and energy of you and Tony Bennett, and I'll be okay.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. Thank you, Bonnie Raitt. Well, Joe, another one of your good friends who just happens to have a star just a few feet to the north here, couldn't be with us today, but he sent a telegram which he asked me to share. So let me read that to you. Dearest Joe, congrats on your star, buddy. Finally, someone has arrived to class up the neighborhood. Welcome to the sidewalk, my dear man. Thank you for being such an amazing champion for artists and music lovers all these years. You are a blessing to us all. I love you, Dave Cause. All right. So I know Dave will be checking out your star to be sure it's well maintained. So now it's our privilege to hear from the councilman who represents the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Central Hollywood on the Los Angeles City Council. He's just passed his 2-year mark of representing Hollywood. He is a fighter, fighting for Hollywood and improving our community. So please welcome the Honorable Mitch O'Farrell.
Thank you so much, LaRon. I want to first give a shout out to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce for making sure that the whole world knows about remarkable individuals like Joe Smith. Let's give a hand to the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. I, for one, cannot even imagine what my own musical sensibilities would be like without the incredible accomplishments of this man. Joe Smith is responsible for helping to nurture, develop, and promote some of the most iconic musicians of the past half-century. The world literally sounds better because of his prodigious talents and lifetime of hard work. For these reasons, he is truly deserving of this star as much as anyone else, this star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Do you all agree? The many recording artists that he worked with over the last half-century have been named, and of course we have the incredible Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Browne with us today. I just want to say, but have Joni Mitchell in our thoughts and prayers, because we want her to get better and produce great music again. Yes. But today is Joe Smith's day, and I am just so honored to represent the city in presenting this certificate of recognition for all your incredible accomplishments, Mr. Smith. It's a real honor and a privilege to be here with you. Thank you. Congratulations, Joe Smith.
Well, thank you, Councilmember O'Farrell. So, Joe, it's time to hear from you, but let me just say there's someone else who would have loved to have been here to help honor you, and that's your good friend Johnny Grant, who passed away several years ago. So in his memory, let me just say we declare this Joe Smith Day in Hollywood. And it's your time to thank you.
There was a man named Stan Freberg, very funny guy, who made some records on Capitol and told me in the event of an earthquake, the Capitol Tower can screw itself into the ground. I never saw that part of it, but this iconic building has turned out such stars and music, and it's one of the great recording studios, just an amazing place. And the record label it represents has come back to life under the direction of Steve Brandt, who rode out here in a white horse from the east and set it straight in the elite class again. But now to the career. I started at Warner Brothers Records, and we bought Reprise Records, Sinatra's company. And along with the buy, I inherited a guy named Mo Austin, who was the head of Reprise at the time, and said, "You come and join with me." And we were known as the Mojo Show, and had a run of hits and success that was out of sight. Mo's under the weather today and could not be here with us. But he has left a legacy, as have so many other artists. Francis Albert Sinatra, who's recorded for here, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and so forth. And it's been a pleasure to have worked with all these folks. You work with the talent, you must assume something. They're all nuts. Now, a lot of nuts and some just quirky, but the talent, they're not like you and I. They can take a sheet of paper, put notes on it, go into a studio, record, and then entertain thousands of people. We can't do that, but they are somewhat nuts. If you spend 8 years with the Grateful Dead, as I have, you'll find that your mind is blown out. They said I would never understand the music unless I dropped some acid with them. So I never ate, drank, or even breathed around them at all. And that worked out. Then I had a warm, cuddly artist who's always so pleasant and friendly. Name is Van Morrison. I was the only one in the company he would talk to. So I got all these rants. And one day I said, Van, you light up a room just by leaving it. Well, we got through that, and Capitol was a great experience, and we have been, my darling wife, Donnie, we've been to Monterey and Woodstock and everything else. I'll do a real... I am going to introduce a couple of people in my family because family is what keeps it all together. My wife, who came out here 58 years ago on a blind date, and somebody told me she was gorgeous and an heiress. 1 out of 2. I've been looking for the money for 58 years. Not a clue. And then my son, Jeff, who's a maven in the wine world, and his wife, the wonderful Amy, digital queen and the little princess of John Thomas Dye, granddaughter Lila Smith. And not to forget, number 2, Julie Nonstop Kellner. She's planning 5 parties for tonight and 6 Thursday. And so with Julie, we have her husband, a legend in the television business who started both the Warner Brothers and Capitol Records. No, not what 20th Century Fox. Jamie Kellner and his son, my best pal, Christopher Kellner. So this is a remarkable day, and everybody's turned out. They had to in the family, or they're out of the will. And I thank all of you for being here, and especially to Bonnie and Jackson, who I admire. They're not nuts. No, they're a little bit nuts, not a lot of nuts. Jackson traditionally takes a little time to make a record. As a matter of fact, I did an interview, and I said Jackson Browne puts out a record every time Halley's Comet comes over. Now that's every 75 years. And as it happened, when I did the interview, it was Halley's Comet time. Jackson took a copy of Time magazine and slugged Jackson Browne's album nears completion. But I thank them because they are such terrific talents and terrific people, and all the Capitol people who have been helpful. Thank you again. And it has been a real special event in my life. Thank you.
All right, Joe, don't sit down because it's time to unveil that star. Let's do it. Walk of Fame, Joe Smith.
Everybody look straight in the center, please. Right in the center. Look to your left, please. Back to the center. So mellow. Over to your right. So now Jackson and Marco. Look straight in the center.
Who are these annoying people?
Look to your left, please. Look to your right, please. I know. Irving's right here. Irving. He wants you.
This is one of the most
Okay, everybody straight in the center, please. Joe, look right
Straight in the center, folks. Go.
Joe, look. Okay?
This Razoff manages the Eagles and anybody else who doesn't have a name. Okay, no fooling around. Make sure the cameras are turned on.
Joe, look left, center, right.
One 5, 8 by 10 gloss sheets are all with it.
You got it, Joe.
And get it, guys. Wait, no, wait. Hold on. No,